This is what 50 years of marriage taught me about love. This piece will be written in the voice of someone reflecting on a half-century of life spent beside one partner, not as a fairy tale, but as an honest, tender, and deeply human journey, through love, hardship, growth, and grace. 50 years is a long time to sit beside the same person. Long enough to memorize the shape of their hands, the way they breathe when they sleep, and the subtle shift in their voice when they're holding something back. Long enough to go from wild, untamed love to quiet, steady partnership, and then, if you're lucky, to something even deeper than that. Not everyone makes it this far. Life has a way of testing love, stretching it, dulling it, sometimes breaking it. But when I look back over half a century with the same person, I don't think about perfection. I think about staying, about growing, about learning how to hold each other, even when you're tired. Especially when you're tired. It didn't always feel like a romance novel. In fact, most of it didn't. The first few years were filled with fire, passion, conflict, dreams too big for our little apartment. We argued about money, about kids, about how to fold towels and how late was too late to come home. But we also danced barefoot in the kitchen. We whispered at midnight. We made promises we barely understood. And then we spent the next 50 years trying to keep them. What they don't tell you when you say, "I do," is how many times you'll have to say it again without the ceremony. In the hospital room, in the middle of a fight, at the dinner table when no one feels like talking. Love, real love, isn't loud. It's not made of flowers and anniversaries and perfect Instagram pictures. It's made of showing up. It's made of listening when you don't agree. It's made of saying, "I'm sorry," when pride is screaming otherwise. And it's made of letting the person you married change, while finding a way to love the new version just as fiercely as the old. Now that I'm in my 70s and my partner and I move a little slower and speak a little softer, I see things I couldn't before. I see how love has shape-shifted, how it's grown roots, how it has lived 1,000 lives inside one shared story. We've known joy and loss, laughter and silence. We've lost friends. We've buried family. We've stared at each other in complete confusion and in overwhelming gratitude, sometimes in the same day. And still here we are. So this isn't a list of tips. It's not a how-to. This is what 50 years of marriage taught me about love. Not just the kind you read about, but the kind you live through, the kind you earn, the kind you choose again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Let's begin. In the beginning, love was loud. We were young, stubborn, and overflowing with the kind of passion that made even silence feel electric. We stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. We argued fiercely, made up fiercely. We chased big dreams with bigger emotions. Everything felt important, immediate, dramatic. That was love, or so I thought. But over the years, the volume changed. And I'll be honest, there were times when I thought maybe love was fading because it didn't shout like it used to. We weren't writing long letters anymore. We weren't surprising each other with weekend getaways or spontaneous kisses in public. There was no music swelling in the background. Just mornings that started with coffee and evenings that ended with dishes and the sound of the news playing in the next room. And then, slowly, I realized something. Love hadn't faded. It had matured. It had settled into the quiet. It was in the way they remembered how I take my tea. In the way they always leave the porch light on when I'm running late. In the way their hand still reaches for mine when we cross the street even now. No grand gesture, just instinct built over time. I began to see love everywhere. In the ordinary, in the unnoticed, in the way we still laugh at the same old jokes. In the way we know when the other one needs space without saying a word. In the way they silently hand me my reading glasses when I'm pretending I can still see small print without them. I remember one night, maybe 30 years in, when I had a terrible cold. I was irritable, coughing nonstop, and too exhausted to care about anything. They made soup, not fancy, just broth and some noodles, but they set it down on the nightstand with a tissue box, a glass of water, and said, sleep. I've got everything covered. They didn't say I love you, but I heard it loud and clear. That's what 50 years teaches you. Love isn't in the fireworks. It's in the follow-through. It's in staying when it's easier to walk away. It's in small acts repeated over decades that say, I see you, I know you, I choose you. And when you look back, those quiet things become the loudest memories. The way they brushed the hair from your face when you were crying. The way they sat beside you in silence when there were no words. The way they showed up again and again when you weren't your best. But they loved you anyway. So no, love isn't always loud, but it's steady, it's faithful, and in the end, those quiet things, they're the ones that echo the longest. I married someone who no longer exists, and before you panic or feel sad for me, let me tell you the whole truth. I've also become someone my partner didn't marry. That's not a failure, that's not betrayal, that's life. We were in our early 20s when we said I do. We didn't know what we were doing, not really. We were in love with the idea of each other, and maybe more so with the idea of building something together. But how could we have known who we'd become 5, 10, 30, 50 years down the road? We were just kids, full of dreams and insecurities and blind optimism. I loved how adventurous they were. They loved how steady I seemed. And we thought, those qualities would carry us forever. But time has a way of sanding down the edges, of revealing layers you didn't even know were there. And slowly, life started changing us. They went through seasons of ambition, seasons of doubt. I went through seasons of motherhood, fear, burnout, reawakening. There were years we grew side by side, and years we grew in opposite directions and had to find our way back. And that, I think, is the part no one really prepares you for. That the person you wake up next to will not be the same person 10 years from now. They will change, not all at once and not in every way, but meaningfully, sometimes beautifully, sometimes painfully, and so will you. There were moments I missed who we used to be. I missed the easy laughter, the long drives, the late nights, dreaming about the future. But there were also moments when I fell in love all over again with new parts of them. The way they handled our daughter's heartbreak, the way they grieved the loss of a parent with quiet strength, the way they softened with age and stopped trying to be right all the time, the way I softened too. Love, real love, makes space for evolution. It doesn't cling to who someone used to be. It adapts, expands, learns to love the new version, and it requires you to keep choosing them, not out of habit, but with intention. To say, I love you, not just to the person you married, but to the person they're becoming, and the person you're becoming too. Some days that was hard. We disappointed each other. We had to relearn how to communicate, how to forgive, how to hold space for change without running away. But the reward was this strange, beautiful kind of love that only comes with time. A love that sees all your chapters, not just your first one. A love that says, even as we change, I'm still here. We don't often talk about the courage it takes to stay in love with someone as they evolve. But it's one of the most sacred acts I know. Because at its core, marriage isn't about loving the same person forever. It's about loving many versions of them and letting them love many versions of you. And if you can do that, if you can make room for growth, for grief, for change, you'll find a depth in each other that no whirlwind romance could ever touch. You'll find something real, something rare, something worth every change along the way. We fought. Let me just say that out loud, because too many people think that if you argue, it means something is broken. It doesn't. It means you're human. It means you care. It means you're not numb yet. In 50 years, we've had our share of slammed doors, sharp words, silent dinners, and long nights of sleeping back to back. We've disagreed about money, parenting, family priorities, even about how to argue. We fought about things that mattered and things that, looking back, absolutely didn't. But here's what I learned. Arguments don't destroy a marriage. Avoidance does. Distance does. That quiet slipping away when neither of you wants to. Be the one to reach out first. That creeping comfort in not talking because it feels easier than being vulnerable. That's what eats away at love, not the shouting. In our earlier years, fights were louder. We said things we shouldn't have. We were quick to defend, slow to listen. Sometimes we hurt each other not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Fear of not being heard, of not being enough, of being wrong. Pride played a bigger role than it should have. There were days when "I'm sorry" felt like surrender, when it should have felt like healing. But we learned. Over time, we began to understand that the real goal wasn't winning, it was returning to each other, even if the words were messy, even if the solution wasn't clear. What mattered most was not letting the fight pull us so far apart that we forgot how to find our way back. Some of our most important moments weren't the ones where we agreed. They were the ones where we disagreed and still chose each other anyway. There's a kind of intimacy in arguing well, in trusting that the other person can handle your truth, in being willing to say, "This hurt me," and also, "Let's figure this out together." We learned how to fight fair, how to stop bringing up the past like ammunition, how to step away when we were too angry to be kind, how to come back when it would have been easier to stay silent. And more importantly, we learned how to repair, to hold each other afterward, even when nothing had been solved yet. To reach for one another in the dark, not because everything was fixed, but because connection mattered more than pride. That's the thing about love. It isn't about never breaking. It's about repairing often and repairing well. If I could offer one piece of truth from 5 decades of marriage, it would be this: arguments are normal. Disconnection happens. But distance is a choice. And the strongest marriages aren't the ones without conflict. They're the ones where both people keep choosing to close the gap again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because love isn't about always being in sync. It's about being willing to return to each other, imperfect, honest, and still holding on. We like to think that intimacy is built in candlelight, in vacations, in anniversaries and bedroom whispers and soft music playing in the background. And yes, sometimes it is. Those moments are real, and they matter. But that's not where the deepest intimacy lives. Real intimacy, the kind that roots itself so deep it can't be shaken, is built in the storms, in the moments when everything feels like it might fall apart, and yet somehow you stay. I remember the first real storm we went through, a miscarriage. I don't talk about it often, not because it doesn't matter, but because it still lives in a quiet place in my heart. We were young and excited and full of dreams, and then suddenly we weren't. There were no words that could fix it. Just silence, grief, guilt, and the way we didn't know how to hold each other in that pain. But we tried. That's where the intimacy started, not in the healing, but in the trying, in the shared sorrow, in the late night crying, in the way we began to understand that real closeness means seeing each other broken and staying anyway. We went through other storms after that. The death of a parent, the diagnosis that shook our routine, years when money was tight, when tempers were shorter than usual, when dreams we counted on didn't come true. There were days when love didn't look like romance. It looked like care. Like driving to the pharmacy at midnight, like sitting in waiting rooms saying nothing, holding hands tighter than we did when we were young, like standing beside a hospital bed and knowing this is what we meant when we said, in sickness and in health. Love, in the storms, becomes less about how someone makes you feel and more about what they're willing to carry with you, about how you hold each other up when everything else is crumbling. And after the storm passes, and it does pass eventually, there's a tenderness left behind that didn't exist before. You look at each other differently, with more reverence, more patience, more truth. You've seen each other raw, grieving, afraid, and instead of turning away, you leaned in. That changes everything, because passion can be found in 1,000 places. But trust is earned in the dark. So many people fear the storms in marriage. They think they signal the end. But I've learned they can also be beginnings. If you let them, they can strip away the surface level things and leave behind something unshakable, something that whispers, even here, I'm with you. That's the kind of intimacy I never expected when we first started out. It's not in the photos, it's not in the scrapbook, but it's in every look we share now when words aren't needed. It's in every morning we wake up still beside each other, not because it was easy, but because we made it through. Real. Intimacy is forged in fire, and if you hold on through the heat, you'll come out the other side with a kind of closeness that's not just felt, it's lived. If you had shown me 50 years ago what our love would look like today, I might not have recognized it. Back then, love was full of motion, of chasing, proving, building, planning. It was louder, faster, more physical. We showed love by doing. Surprise dates, late-night talks, impromptu kisses in the car. And that version of love was beautiful. It had its place. It gave us memories and magic and momentum. But now love has a quieter rhythm. We don't run toward each other anymore. We walk, slowly, side by side. Sometimes without speaking. Sometimes with one of us helping the other up the stairs or into bed. The body changes, the speed of life changes. But love doesn't leave. It just settles. And when it does, it reveals layers I never noticed before. Love after 70 is full of softness. It's full of quiet companionship. The kind where sitting in the same room reading two different books still feels like a conversation. The kind where you don't need to ask how their day was because you lived it together. Every quiet, ordinary moment of it. It's in the way they still touch my back gently when I pass them in the kitchen. It's in how they remember I always leave the light on in the hallway at night. It's in how we've stopped needing to finish each other's sentences, because the silence in between speaks just as loudly now. There's something tender and humbling about loving someone through aging, watching them forget things more often, seeing their body slow down, hearing the small sigh when they bend to tie their shoes. You want to fix it. You want to give them back their strength, their ease. But what you learn is that love at this stage is not about fixing. It's about being present. It's about offering your steady hand, your patient heart, your loyal company. This version of love isn't written about as often, but it's no less romantic. In fact, it might be more so, because it's easy to love someone when everything's new and exciting. It's another thing entirely to love someone when life has stripped you both down to the bare essentials. When it's just two people and a shared history and the decision, every day, to stay soft with each other. We don't talk much about that kind of love in a world obsessed with youth. But I wish we did, because there is something breathtaking about waking up next to the same person you've grown old with, about knowing every scar on their body, every line on their face, about seeing how time has touched them, and loving them more, not less, because of it. So no, our love doesn't look the way it did when we were young. It looks different. It looks slower, softer, steadier. It looks like morning coffee, like shared aches and deep laughter, like patience, like legacy. And to me, that's not a fading of love. That's its full bloom. People always want to know the secret. 50 years. How did we do it? What kept us together? What held it all in place when so many others fell apart? I never have a short answer. Because love, real love, isn't a formula. It's not one secret, it's 1,000 small choices. It's not perfect compatibility or flawless communication. It's not avoiding pain or always knowing what to say. Love is more rugged than that, more resilient, more human. What 50 years of marriage taught me is that love is less about grand declarations and more about daily devotion. It's not about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who will walk beside you while you both become whole. It's about growing up and growing old with someone and learning over and over again how to stay soft in a world that often hardens people. It taught me that love is quiet, that it changes, that it fails sometimes, but it can be repaired. That the truest intimacy doesn't always show up in good times. It shows up when everything feels broken and you choose each other anyway. It taught me that forgiveness is oxygen, that humor is glue, that curiosity keeps things alive, That the simple act of sitting together in silence in old age can mean more than all the flowers and letters and anniversaries in the world. Love after 50 years isn't flashy, it's not for show. But it's real, it's rooted, and it's sacred. So if you're just starting your journey, don't waste time searching for perfection. Look for presence. Look for someone who will meet you in the middle, who will fight with you, not against you, who will grow with you, not around you. And if you're already in it, if you've weathered some storms and wondered if it's all worth it, let me tell you, it is. It really, truly is. Every laugh line, every scar, every quiet morning, every hard-won forgiveness, every moment you kept reaching when it would have been easier to retreat. Love is not the absence of hardship. It is the willingness to go through it, together. So here I am, 5 decades in, with the same hand in mine, the same heart beside me, changed, softened, weathered, and more in love than I knew was possible. This is what 50 years taught me, that love isn't something you find and keep. It's something you build, lose, rebuild, and carry. And if you carry it with care, it becomes something even time cannot wear down, something you get to call home. And that, my friend, is worth every step.